This is EdTech, the monthly look at the education segment of the AV industry. My name is Tim Albright. I'm your host. Welcome. With us this month, Ernie Bailey from the UAMS in beautiful Arkansas. How are you, sir?
I'm doing just great. Everything is wonderful here in Little Rock.
Also with us is Greg Brown from beautiful Southern California, UCLA. How are you, sir?
Hello. Hello, everyone. Hello, Tim. Just fine.
Also from another sunny place, Mike Brandis from Palm Beach Atlantic University. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
We'll talk about why he's moving. We'll just put it that way. That's what you call a teaser there, folks. And holy crap, the internet started working in Maine. How are you, Mr. Scott Tyner is from Bates College. How are you, sir?
Doing well. We did. We started getting some T1 lines in here just a few months ago.
T1s, holy cow!
He got the ice knocked off of the data lines in the last couple of weeks.
It's August. There hasn't been ice in Maine for at least 3 or 4 weeks. Come on.
Oh yeah.
Leave him alone. All right. This month we're going to talk about a host of things, a couple products. Actually, 2 of our guests have written pieces that we're going to talk about. Also talk about consultants and how you deal with them in the education space. But first, let's kick it off with the product. I guess is the best way to put this. From the world of AMX and some of us, actually, well, what was about a year or so ago, a couple of us from EdTech got a hold of an Innova from AMX. And got to play around with it. We at the college I used to work for, Lewis and Clark, we were primarily a Crestron house, and so I never really messed with an Innova. And it was a neat box. The control was interesting because it was a kind of a configurator, similar to, if you're more familiar with Crestron, it was kind of like System Builder, only online. Well, they announced this week that their Innova line, their all-in-one boxes, have their newest, latest, greatest processors, which is interesting because what this kind of led me to is the fact that there are some other manufacturers who still don't have their latest, greatest processors. So, Scott, we'll start with you on this. Is there a thinking behind this? I mean, good for AMX for doing this, right? The fact that with this all-in-one box, it's you got their most powerful processor. But then why wouldn't some other companies that have all-in-one boxes not do the same thing? Is it maybe a manufacturing thing? Is it an engineering thing? Or is it simply the fact that they're not ready to roll that out?
The truth is, Tim, I have no idea on this one. I don't pay attention to AMX at all. I'm sorry.
No, not AMX. The question is not about AMX. It's more about other companies who do have all-in-one boxes. Yeah. And do not have the latest processors in them. So why wouldn't those manufacturers do that? If they've got a processor that's faster than what they're putting in their current all-in-one boxes, why wouldn't they upgrade it?
It's a good question, Greg. What do you think?
Greg, what do you think?
Who specifically are you referring to as not having a processor in their boxes? I mean,
okay, I'll say I'm not afraid to say it. Crestron. Crestron's DMPSs. Those are still the 2 series processors, right? I mean, I've heard rumors of the 3 series processors, but I've not seen one.
Last week, a little bird told me that there's going to be a 3 series processor version of the 300 in the not too distant future.
Well, and that same little bird was probably related to your. Huh? Go ahead, Ernie.
I said I heard that was in November.
Of this year.
Okay. Of this year is when we can really expect to see that released. I think to answer your question, if you don't mind me jumping in.
Thank you for answering.
Why start now?
Well,
exactly.
Yeah. They have a working platform. I mean, do you really want to upset that platform that's selling? Yes, we want their newest, latest, and greatest, but I want a stable platform before I want a new platform. I want one that I know I can rely on, and then if they upgrade their processors and come out with a new box, great, but I'm happy that they don't immediately change processors mid-run. Like we've seen other people do with products in the past.
And Ernie does make a good point, because let's be honest, those of us who have programmed DMPSs, when you hit the compile button, you basically take a lunch break. It takes a while to compile. So that may be some of that, right? We're trying to get all of that, everything that happens in that box to work nicely together. So, I don't know. Mr. Mike,
it's a change in the way we're doing things. I mean, I'd hate to really give Extron credit for starting this, because
oh, go ahead.
No, you can't really. I don't think you can really compare the AMX and Crestron systems to Extron systems, but they kind of started that of putting the processors, putting everything in the same box. Lord knows they had to have something going for their systems, and that was.
Well, hey, Matt, when did they do that? Because I'm confused, because I was always under the impression that the MPS years ago, the analog version of the DMPS, was one of the first. I think that even predates the ANOVA. Crestron's MPS with the analog.
See, I didn't use those. Did those had processors inside?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that was it. That was. Go ahead, Ernie.
So yeah, they did have processors. They were reliable. By the time we started using them, and we were very happy with them. But that was one of the first Crestron products we put in.
Yeah, us too.
Yeah, but Extron did have their system processors. Their System 8, their System 10.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't know if you could call it a control processor, but they could turn a projector on and off.
Yeah.
And I believe may have had relays in them. Some of those System 5 IPs might have had relays in them. But I do agree. I think that those original MPSs were pretty powerful stuff.
Well, and when I wrote when an Extron released what they were referring to as their all-in-one box, it wasn't. But when they initially announced it around ISE this year, one of the points that I made in my blog when I was giving them a hard time about it is exactly that, Scott. Their System 7, their System 5 stuff had 232 control and had relays in it, and they did that 10, 15 years ago. So why on earth they couldn't have initially released a processor in that box is beyond me. Now, a month, 2 months later, they did say, "Hey, by the way, now it's embedded in the box." So, all right. Well, now that you guys just totally poo-pooed that story, let's just talk about flipped classroom. Flipped classrooms to me was the buzzword. Somebody took huddle spaces this year from last year's InfoComm and said, "Hey, let's call it flipped classrooms instead." Not really. The idea of flipped classrooms is something from a pedagogical standpoint, if I can say that, has been happening in education for a while. And the idea is that you watch the lecture or you consume the lecture outside of the classroom. You come in and you do the homework and do the class presentation and stuff like that collaboratively, right, in the classroom. Mike, Mr. Brandis, wrote a very nice piece, and so we'll start with you on this. You name a couple products that some of it came out in InfoComm, some of it came out before InfoComm, but you name a couple pieces that are, in your word, not perfect, but in your words, work for collaboration in flipped classrooms. Name a couple of those and kind of give me the reasons why.
Yeah, well, first of all, there's a ton of players in this space. You can talk about, Barco, ClickShare, Christy Brio. You can talk to your blue in the face about a bunch of different products. But for education, you just want something simple, easy to use, easy to operate, that just works and offers you collaboration. So, kind of some of the things I talked about for smaller rooms, maybe where you have a ad hoc scheduling system or, pure BYOD, is the AMX Enzo was a big winner. A very small form factor, tape it to the back of your TV, give it a network connection. Coming this fall, it's going to have full support for soft video conferencing just via a USB camera. So it's kind of an all-in-one solution for your 10 to 12 person tiny conference room, or add 5 of them to different pods in a classroom, and you've done your entire space for $3,000 a box basically. And so that was a big winner. Now in terms of larger spaces where you want to have a full flipped classroom and 20 pods with 5 inputs apiece, you're talking a huge matrix. And we're finally seeing the return of like massive matrix systems to higher education. 32 by 32, 64 by 64, and both Extron and Crestron currently make one that's more than capable of handling the bandwidth associated with 4K at 30 frames. So, those products work for higher ed right now. FSR had a great, I believe it's called the Huddle View, that they did, displayed at Infocom. That's a real winner. That's a piece of furniture built in. You add in, that's an all-in-one solution, literally start to finish furniture. All you have to do is just add displays. That's all you're talking about in terms of making these huddle spaces, or flipped learning spaces, or any of the other buzzwords we want to talk about, a reality. So it's kind of, people are starting to design, products in mind for smaller applications instead of saying, hey, you have to go with a huge matrix system, or, pretty much you can do that, or an Apple TV. There's a lot of these middle ground things that are saving universities money and maximizing return because they're increasing utilization.
And that the Enso actually, it came out, not this Infocom, but last Infocom. It's a very neat little product. And this size here, I mean, it's not very big at all. So the space and the footprint on it is not going to impact your space.
About the size of 2 Apple TVs stacked on top of each other. It's not big at all. Perfect if you're doing just a display on the wall. You can mount it to the back of your display and put a wireless keyboard on your table. That's pretty much everything you need, especially with all of its cloud-based storage options.
Yeah, that's been kind of, and one of the things it has is, was it Dropbox? If you utilize Dropbox, you can make a QR code and put it up on the screen, and students can scan the QR code and immediately go there and download your presentation. So I thought that was cool. Ernie, when you're designing flip classrooms and that idea, or if you were designing one, what are a couple of products that you have to have, or the types of products? I mean, you don't have to name manufacturer specific, but types of products.
Well, I would be looking at some sort of small switcher that can support. I mean, all of our rooms we provide a computer for the presenter to use, but we also provide some sort of input for BYOD, so they can bring whatever they want. So those and a good display. Earlier this week, Mike and I were talking, and when we do any of these flip rooms, we're doing large ones that are able to do presentations and then break up into small groups and have them working together at the same time. So I'm not doing any of these small ones. So I work with the large matrix that Mike mentioned a while ago, and we just like to provide multiple sources or multiple places to bring in whatever device the student may walk in with, or the faculty may walk in with.
Greg, are you guys doing, ask this question first, are you doing flipped classrooms yet?
Not really, no. There's been a little bit of talk among some of the different groups. Our problem is everybody tends to do things independently and figure things out on their own. We seem to like the academic freedom of 200 departments heading off in 200 different directions and not talking to one another. So that's often our MO around here. There have been a few attempts and some talk, but nothing particularly interesting to report that I've seen.
Okay. Is there if you had to design one, what are some of the things that you think that you would need?
I really have been looking for, been working with a lot of smaller departments. We will build, we do our own rooms, and then we will build rooms for departments, particularly smaller rooms, so that they don't have to go out to a local integrator. Yeah, if they've got a ton of money and they're doing a bunch of rooms, they can go work with somebody and pay them an arm and a leg. But we keep pretty busy doing small rooms for departments, and I'm hoping to find an application there where somebody's got a conference room or something where they just want to use one of these little boxes, and there are so many, like Mike said, on the market. Try out something like that. I think that would be a really neat thing to just find an application for here to start to have stuff like that here on campus, so we can see them. I mean, it's really confusing sitting down and trying to read the tech specs for all of these little boxes at one time.
Well, that's what your reps are for, just bring them in and just say, hey, tell me what the differences are.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no rep that reps every single one of those boxes.
Well, that's true. That's true.
So,
Mr.
so
Tyner?
they're all, how shall we say, biased.
No, not reps. Mr. Tyner, do you have something to say about this one? That's your chops. Here's the thing. The one thing about Scott that if you haven't listened before in a while, Scott's very knowledgeable about pedagogical. Say it for me, dude.
Pedagogical.
Thank you.
Pedagogical.
That's it. He's heavily involved in his local school board. He's heavily involved, obviously, in Bates College. So the idea of the flipped classroom, I mean, are we all kind of on the same page here, or is there something, maybe one or two products that we're not thinking of?
I think that we're on the same page, and I think that what we often see is these ideas changing and growing over time. And I really, when I think of these rooms, I think of what Ernie described in the sense of a large room where a teacher can lecture, talk, discuss, and then students can go break off into their own and do group work, take that group work and present it up on a large screen for everybody to see. For me, I think the big thing that we're still missing, and the thing that's going to be required here, is that wireless piece, that easy wireless piece. And we've done a few little things. We've used AirMedia, we've used Apple TV, we used Chromecast, we use a thing now. Of course, I can't think of it's a piece of Doceri, which is a little bit different. It's a piece of software, but not one of them fits that. What you really need if you want to do this is just to whip out my iPad and in 2 clicks be presenting on the screen, and that's it. And be able to get a good feed that's not jittery, that the audio doesn't jitter on. And I haven't seen that yet. I think that's the real key. I think that. And all the money we're saving on all the wiring and all the huge matrices can go back into some of that wireless stuff. So that to me is the real key. But I think that idea that Ernie had of a large room breaking up into smaller groups. We've tried a few collaboration tables around campus, and they just they don't get used at all because there's no. I don't see any really use to it. Students would just rather sit around and turn their iPad to each other and look at it. But some of those other uses in the classroom, I think, are definitely the future.
You raise a good point, and I'm going to ask you and everybody else here. Every wireless system I've seen in demonstration, a lot of times it will work. It'll work flawlessly, and then you'll take it, or you'll purchase it, or you'll get a demo of it, and you'll take it into your application, right? There's a specific situation I can think of, again, back to the days when I worked for the college, that it was a little dongle. It was, a USB dongle. It had a transmitter. The computer used that and sensed that as an external monitor. It sent over RF to a VGA or an HDMI receiver, and plugged that into the monitor. No big deal. On demonstration, it worked great.
That was the best solution I've ever seen. We had several of those devices. They were VGA. They carried audio as well as the video. Yep. Plugged into USB device, so it worked on any platform. Anything that had a USB connector on it, it would be seen as an external monitor. It worked with Macs, PCs. Had somebody connect it to a Linux box, and it worked.
Wow.
This was before Android was a platform, but it was a real good solution when you needed a quick wireless connection to something, and it did all of its own configuring when you hooked it up. So
yeah, just don't put it in a building that's full of concrete. That was the case where we found.
What we found was in an open space line of sight, I could do it 300 feet. Mm-hmm. If there was a paper wall, it narrowed it down to 10 feet.
Oh, wow.
Whose was that? Who made that?
I don't remember. It was a greenish-gray box. We had several of them, all by the same manufacturer. I can't remember who made it.
I can't either. Because like I said, once we got into our application, it didn't work for us, so we took it out and it landed in a drawer somewhere.
And I think that's what we see, over and over again. And certainly, Ernie, it sounds like that was also before, the iPads and many tablets came out.
Yes,
So now,
it was before the iPads or tablets, anything like that. So it was great. You could set it up. If there was someone in the office, they needed to do a presentation to a conference room, and they had, dedicated software on their computer. They couldn't relocate. It beat running a 40-foot cable and taping it down along the doorways.
Yeah, and I think that my hope is that now what we're going to see is manufacturers start producing things that really work, because there's a real reason to now. Before it was, somebody wants to sit at that end of the conference table, they don't want to get up and walk to the other side to plug in. So there's not that huge demand. But now when we start talking about these flipped classrooms and interactive classrooms, there's going to be huge demand, because it doesn't make sense to put 45 connectors in a room so every single person can connect. So I'm hoping that the manufacturers kind of start catching on to that and really, we also, the other issue though is most of the time we're running over our own Ethernet or wireless, and that's a whole nother issue that people have to deal with.
Right.
No, it is. All right, Mr. Tyner he's a blogger for Ray Publications, and an interesting piece, not your latest one, because I just saw that you posted another one, because I grabbed this story before you posted your new one. But I grabbed this, and mainly because it's something that we've talked about a lot in the 2.5, 3 years we've been doing this show, and that is this. Scott lives in Maine. Let's be let's be honest here. Maine is not the the easiest place for some reps to get to. It's not an excuse. It's just in the northeast of the country. I live in St. Louis, and the college I worked for is outside of St. Louis. You would think it's centrally located, but we didn't see a whole lot of reps either. And you got a response from a rep from a company that I have a good rep from them, and it's Draper. Amy Madden of Draper asked you a question, and I'm going to ask the same to all of you, and we'll start with you, Scott. How do manufacturer reps find technology managers? It's something that I didn't think about. In all the times that we've talked about this, is how do people who do this for a living, right? A couple of really good friends of mine are a rep. Michael Drainer is a rep for Sennheiser. My buddy Kevin Iselli used to be education rep for Crestron. That was one of those things that I just never thought about. I just figured that they had a database somewhere. So Mr. Tyner, what was your response, or did you have a response for Amy when she asked you that?
Yeah, I did have a response. It was, wow, that's a great question, Amy. And I didn't have an actual answer, and that's what that short blog I wrote was about, which is, so you look at a company, let's say Crestron, just because I happen to know that, I buy something from my retailer, my name goes along to Crestron with that. They know that Bates College bought that. I'm not sure that happens with every other place. So their question is, I'm from Draper. There are, especially in New England, right? There's hundreds and hundreds of colleges there. Should I just start looking through a directory and start calling people in the IT department and get hung up on until I finally reach the one person that I'm supposed to talk to? How do I find you? And so my proposal was there should be some opt-in database somewhere, whether the Technology Managers Council, if we know anybody who's involved with that, they could look into doing something like that. Or some publication do it and make some money off of it somehow. But it was a great question, and one, like you said, Tim, I'd actually never thought of. And when she said it, actually what I said was, wow, that's interesting, because even at some of the schools down the street from me, Bowdoin College, let's say, I'm not even sure who my colleague is over there.
Yeah.
So how would she find them, or her?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, the only reason I know the folks from WashU, which is in St. Louis and St. Louis University, is because they happen to be on the Technology Managers Council. And if only we had, the chairman of the Technology Managers Council readily available to us.
We'll see if we can get him on next time.
There he is, Greg Brown.
Wow, that was fast.
You know,
Speak of the devil.
I am old, but I am quick.
We won't go there.
How you know what? How do manufacturers reps find technology managers?
Oh, I thought you wanted to talk about the Technology Managers Council.
No.
How it's tough because it's tough on in a sense on both sides of the street. There are people like everybody here who are out there and they're into social networking and they're doing the social media and they are writing, they're blogging, they're doing little webcasts, things like that. Most of us are reasonably easy to find. On the flip side, there are plenty of folks in higher ed who, there are plenty of higher ed places where AV is handled by some IT guy who doesn't understand AV and hates it, and the last thing he wants to do is be bothered by somebody else in the AV field, trying to sell somebody. On the flip side, you have reps and you have salespeople who, man, we've got one guy locally here who he could get on the phone with me 6 or 9 months after I last talked with him, and he would remember everything we talked about. He would remember, what projectors we liked, what projectors we didn't like. When he saw something, he could call up with, hey, I know you really like to do this there at UCLA. This company just came out with this. Is that something to be interested to you? And he just could target things so amazingly well. Whereas most salespeople and reps aren't like that, and frankly, a lot of them basically don't do their homework, and they don't look for people, and they don't. I got another guy here. I could talk with him, 2 weeks after I last talked with him about a project, and I'd have to explain everything all over again because it's like 5 minutes off the phone. Poof! It's Mr. Short-Term Memory guy. He's remembered nothing about what I just explained to him. So. Tech managers are all over the map, and reps are all over the map, good and bad on both extremes.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Mr. Ernie, how would you suggest people find you and
Well,
managers?
I think something, at least within this group, we have in common. We've all written in the various journals and online areas about AV, and when I've done that in the past, usually shortly after I have an article come out in a trade journal or trade magazine, I'll get calls from new reps, and they'll say, my boss read your article and asked me how much business we're doing with you.
Wow.
Well, funny you mentioned that, Ernie, because that's actually the first time I heard from my AMX rep after being here for 4 years was when I was on EdTech last time. He's like, my boss saw the podcast, saw we were talking about upgrading to digital and how far we were, and go figure, we're not very far. And I mentioned that. He's like, well, we would like to help you get there. And I'm like, just from seeing me talk about how few rooms I have with digital signal. But here we go. So.
Yeah. Well, like I said, that's how I've been found by some of them. And I guess word kind of gets out after that point. And sometimes you'll be hit with an independent rep that represents several different firms in different areas of the AV market, and then they'll share back with their manufacturers, and you'll start hearing more people that way. So
it has its disadvantages. I wrote that rather well, somebody said scandalous 2-part series on integrators there in Infocom All Voices, a year and a half ago, and you wouldn't believe all the integrators that called me up and wanted to be my new best friend after that happened. And we generally don't use integrators, and so those were always interesting conversations. And once they learned that there was no money to be made, they told me what they thought of me and my opinions.
Well, and Ernie brought up a good point, and that's the independent rep, right? I think they're valuable. I really think they're invaluable because nothing against the manufacturer's reps. Again, have really good friends who are manufacturer's reps, but those independent reps do something that you get in with them, or you get known by them, right? We have a few here in St. Louis.
Absolutely.
that I've gotten to know over the years. And again, they give you a breadth of products. There's one that that covers well, he has speakers, he covers Digico boards, he does this, that, the other. Really knowledgeable guy, really smart. And again, he covers a bunch of different products and gets your name and your the face of your college in front of these various different manufacturers. So I guess that would be the other thing is find the independent reps. They have an organization, and I apologize. I'll research it, I'll look it up, and I'll put it on the show notes. Marla Strassenberg from Sapphire Marketing turned me on to them because she's a member of that organization. And it's just, again, one of those things where if you want to get contacted by an independent rep, it would be one aspect to go. Go ahead, Greg.
They also are some of the best shows. I went to a table show with one independent rep last week, and I'm going to another one in like 2 or 3 weeks. And yeah, little tables, you'll have 10, 20, 30 different companies, and generally a free lunch. And it's really useful to just be able to spend a couple hours and talk to all these folks in an environment so much different than what we've got at Infocom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful resource.
Wonderful resource, absolutely.
Hello.
Huh?
Hey.
How you doing?
Am I?
We're going to mute Mr. Tyner there as he talks to someone. It sounded like his wife, and that could get personal. So
I was going to say it didn't sound like his boss.
No, it did not.
Well, maybe actually on the flip side it was.
Hey, you sexist little thing, that could have been his boss. I thought you were progressive. You're from.
Hey, doesn't this
No,
mute
no,
button work?
it just sounded entirely too chummy for his boss.
It did sound a little chummy, yes.
All right.
But like I said, maybe in a sense it was his boss.
Yes.
Is this mute button working now?
Yes, you're on.
I'm on. How come this is now? Am I on?
Now you're on.
Okay, so my mute button doesn't work. I thought I'd hit that properly.
Well, I muted it for you. So.
All right. I hung up on my boss. I'll talk to the person later.
All right. Extron has a couple different schools and a couple of new classes. One is called the School of Emerging Technologies. This one is for consultants and consultants only. So you lowly technology managers do not need to apply. I could apply, but they wouldn't take my application because they won't give me the time of day anymore. But the reason I brought that up is in my new role, right? I'm the director of operations for a company called Innovad. We're a design consulting firm as well as for we're also an independent programming house. One of my guys actually is working for Ernie. Interesting project. There's been some ups and downs this summer. But Ernie and I were talking about how you deal with getting into how you handle design consultants from the education standpoint, right? Because there's been a couple different there are a couple different avenues when you go down the holy cow, we're going to spend $5-10 million to build a brand new building road. One is, hey, I can do this, right? I'm a technology manager, let me handle it. Another aspect is to let the architect bring in somebody, and another aspect is to get an AV design consultant on your own. From the college's standpoint, that's who they hire. They become your liaison, your owner's rep when it comes to the architect table and talking about the technology. Ernie, we'll start with you on this one. How do you think that the colleges should handle interfacing with design consultants?
Well, I just went through this over the last several months. I got money to upgrade three of our lecture halls here on campus, and I had about a $250,000 room budget. And I said, we can do this ourselves. We know what we want. So we wrote up the specs of exactly how we wanted it to be and put it out to bid. And the bids came in at about $1.5 million, almost double what I wanted. And it really surprised me. And I started talking to some of the integrators that bid on this project, because this was too big to be done in-house. And they said, well, you weren't real specific in certain areas of your scope, So we had to plan for worst case scenarios. So after that, we have a consultant basically on retainer here at our university. We have a contract with him. I can call him, and he will give me an hour quote. You know, this is going to take this many hours. I already know how much an hour is going to cost. Well, I ended up paying him between $6,000 and $7,000 to review and help us rewrite our request for proposals that we had put out. And, you know, some of our academic people thought that was a whole lot of money to spend. Well, we put it back out and low bid for the exact same thing that we wanted. But after being reviewed and, you know, having guidance in writing the paperwork, was $650,000.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So I was not only well under what our previous bid had been, but $1.5 million, I was $100,000 under my proposed budget that I'd set up.
By spending,
and it had everything that we wanted being done the way that we wanted to do it, but the consultant knew how to word it better to put it out to bid. So that was, you know, what I did. And normally I would say, you know, if we're not building a $10 or $15 million building, why do we need to have a consultant? I mean, it's basic AV work, right?
Yeah.
For doing 2 or 3 small rooms, something like that. And, you know, I think probably for our smaller rooms I would still do that. But if I had another project like this, I would do the same thing. One other area where I use the same consultant, once again, we have a 3-year contract with him, was we were designing our big flip classroom we talked about a while ago.
Yeah.
And we were on a real tight deadline. We did the complete design in-house, and then bid out the installation to meet the timelines that we had. So I sent my plans once again to the consultant, and he reviewed it, and he made a few comments. You know, I would, when you're drawing this section out, draw it out a little bit different, things like that. Stuff that made sense in-house, but he said, if you're going to put this out to bid, do it. Well, we did. We designed it that way. We put it out to bid. It came in at just what we had expected it to, and it was designed, built exactly the way we had proposed it, and it worked on the first try. But having the consultant review it gave me a higher level of confidence in the system that we put out, and it validated our work to our bosses.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the question like this: how do you find then a good consultant? And the reason I ask it, and I ask it from a standpoint of I used to be a technology manager, right? And
Right.
We had more than one AV consultant on our campus. Some were superstars, and some could not design their way out of a wet paper bag. So, so the question is, how do you find a good one?
Okay, well, the way we found our first one, or the one that we're using, is an architect actually brought him in for a project that had some AV in it, and the architect wasn't familiar with it, and they hadn't really worked with us that much, so they wanted to bring a consultant in to help coordinate that, and they decided to add a digital signage system, so we'd never done anything like that, so I was very excited to have the consultant. Now, I will say when they brought the consultant in and asked me to come meet with him, they hadn't told me who it was. It happened to be a consultant that I have presented with at Infocom many times.
Oh, wow, okay.
So, you know, I walked in and I knew the guy. You know, we've been good friends and colleagues for years.
Yeah.
But, you know, he was brought in independent of my recommendation. He was brought in by an architect, and everybody on campus was happy with him. So when we asked him to bid on a 3-year contract, he was happy to do so.
Yeah. And see, that's good. Some of it is I guess it comes down to personal relationships, because
Yeah.
if you just do a search for AV consultant, you'll find advertising and listings for whatever, but you don't really know who you're getting until you do a job with them.
Right.
Greg, what would you say when it comes to getting a consultant in UCLA? How would you guys go about it?
We don't tend to use them for what we do, the classroom projects.
They don't even use integrators. So.
That's true.
Tend to do everything in house. What can I say? It's better, faster, and cheaper. You can't argue with success. The big projects that do use architects and consultants, a lot of times it's the good old-fashioned way higher ed does a lot of things. Lowest bidder.
Right.
And that explains a lot of the projects on campus, actually.
Unfortunately.
And let me, while we're on the subject, let me just say, this whole design of classroom process is full of all sorts of real big questions and minefields and decisions that have great big ramifications further on down the process, all of which will be addressed in the upcoming AV and IT infrastructure guidelines for higher education document coming out from Infocom this fall.
Very nice plug.
How's that for a plug?
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I pissed them off this morning, so I got to do something good today.
You should get a T-shirt. How did you piss them off again?
He says that every month.
I know he does.
Well,
you be nice to them.
Huh?
You be nice to them.
I'm trying. It's just difficult sometimes.
All right.
There's
Scott,
still
how often did you piss them off as the chair?
I never did.
I didn't either.
But the reason that Greg can get away with upsetting them is that nobody else wants to be on committees like the one he just mentioned. So he can do whatever he wants.
This is true. You can't fire me. I'm a volunteer. and actually, I did not piss them off on the Tech Managers Council, at least not that I know of. It's just with the Standards Committee, but never mind.
You're on the Standards Committee?
Well, the document is through the Standards Committee.
Oh, okay.
They're an intense bunch of people.
That they are. All right. Good night, guys. What else do we got this month? Anybody want to talk about the Crestron TCW 730, the touchscreen control system?
Which I think has a processor inside.
Well, that's the thing. That's what kind of.
That's the control system.
That's the. Yeah. Never mind. All right. That's going to do it for us. Scott Tyner from Bates College. Thank you so much, sir.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad I was finally able to answer a couple questions.
Well,
Yeah.
I understand.
It took my mind a little time to wake up in the cold Northeast.
Yeah, cold. I'll trade you, dude. It's 90 and humid in St. Louis today.
Yeah, I tell you, summers in Maine they're worth it. You can't pass them up.
Yeah. Where can people find you and your musings?
You can either find it on Rave Pubs or Rave Ed or Rave Digital Signs or on Twitter. I'm always tweeting out either ridiculous or valuable things, depending on how I feel, and occasionally on LinkedIn, although not as much as Mr. Brown is.
Well, no, he's got like 10,000 connections or something.
Well, I mean, he's Greg Brown from UCLA.
It just seems to be where people will track me down.
And he's 100, so when you've been around that long.
He created LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yeah, Moses was his first connection. All right. So, Mr. Brown.
Oh, man.
Sorry. I could have said something like Methuselah or,
Adam.
Oh,
Adam. Yeah, Adam.
Oh, yeah, you're getting better. Keep going.
Where can people find you?
LinkedIn, apparently, and I tweet, and I have been known to blog for Infocom All Voices, although they're still holding my my post-show blog hostage. Last I checked, for having the audacity of mentioning company names, but oh well. That's where.
And you're also the Technology Manager Council Chair.
And yes, the Technology Managers Council Chair, where if Tyner would actually like to turn his gripe there into a project, we could actually submit it as a council project.
What gripe was that?
Huh?
Where people find technology managers.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I did at one point. But anyway, that's another story for another day.
Probably when he was chair.
No. I emailed Greg Brown about it a few months ago.
Well, somebody's got to help you
I didn't get a response, so I thought I'd bring it up here.
Well, we had another project we were working on at the time, and actually we submitted it back in May, so maybe we would hear something back before the show, and we haven't heard anything on our initial council project proposal either, so I have a feeling I'm probably the phone's going to be ringing from Fairfax any minute, I think.
Well, I just want to be clear to all our Infocom viewers out there that I love the organization, and I'm very happy to participate in everything.
It's just Greg that has the problem with it.
I think
They
it
don't
is.
have a problem with Infocom. They're just a little erratic sometimes.
And they're not erratic. I think what it is that you're from Southern California and they're from Virginia, and you're all like, oh, man, whatever, cool, dude. And they're like, we have standards and structures.
That sounds like a standards committee.
So LinkedIn, is that it? In all voices?
You
You think?
Yeah. Twitter.
AV Greg, yeah.
Yeah.
AV Greg. All right.
I'll think of another before we wrap up and interrupt again, I'm sure.
You still have a MySpace page?
I don't think I ever. Actually, I just got back on Facebook for a few weeks ago for the first time in like years.
A MySpace page.
All right, Mr.
I'm
Bailey.
up to like 20 friends on Facebook right now.
I'll give you 21. Ernie, where can people find you, sir?
You can find me on LinkedIn.
Very good. That just works. And last but not least, Mike Brandis. This will be the last episode that he is able to be on an AV Nation podcast for EdTech as a technology manager, because he is headed up to the great north, and he will no longer be a technology manager. Where are you going, sir?
I am headed to Vadio, who makes, as we hopefully all know, fantastic cameras and apps-based video conferencing systems. So I'll be headed there early in September, and do some fun things there.
He's trading summers for winters.
Yeah, I'm trading 11 months of summer for 5 months of winter, and I feel like that's a pretty good trade.
That's only what they're telling you, Mike.
Yeah, it's 9 months of winter, dude. 9 months.
We'll see.
Don't hang on. Don't use this last winter as a as your measuring
Vortex is not the norm, Scott.
Yeah, this was not normal.
But Scott will send you his dog sled
and his snow boots or his snowshoes.
Thank you.
So you're going to Vadio as applications engineer. So congratulations to you there.
Thank you.
But where can people find you? Because you've still got your website, you've still got your Twitter and your writings.
I'm Mike Brandis AV on Twitter, MikeBrandisAV.com. I'm on SCN's AVNetwork.com, writing there twice a month. And then I've got an article hopefully coming out soon in AV Technology Magazine. So I'm all over the place. Yeah, I don't expect that to change too much.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. My name is Tom Albright. Don't follow my Twitter. It's just me and football and stuff, especially coming up the next week. Go Bears. That's the other thing you've got going against you, Mr. Brandis, is you're up in freaking enemy territory now. If you're not a football fan, Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah,
and
no.
Chicago
You
Bears.
see, what you don't remember is my hometown Tampa Bay Bucks used to be in that terribly odd NFC Central division we used to play all you guys.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
We could never.
You guys used to be the
show.
AFC too, didn't you?
That was way before I was born. We were in the NFC Central when I was born. Keep in mind.
That's when you were in your 20s, Tim.
Thank you. Yes.
Must be nice to live in a city with an NFL team.
Oh.
Well, I say
We had one for a while, Greg.
I do live in a city with an NFL team. Your NFL team.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'd like to live in a state with an NFL team.
Yeah.
Hey Tim,
Yes.
let's talk hockey. Thank you very much.
Oh jeez. Yeah.
All
I
right,
got
we're
nothing.
devolving very quickly.
I got nothing there.
Speaking of buzzkills,
Good for you.
Yeah.
All I gotta say is good for you. So anyhow, Go by the website. Don't follow me. avnation.tv. avnation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. We just did a State of Control yesterday, so it'll post sometime this week. AV Week will not happen on Friday because we have a special guest this week on AV Week, Aviv Ron from Kramer. He's coming to us live from Israel, so we're doing that on Sunday because of the whole time change, and not time change, but the time difference. There's about a 9-hour time difference between Central Time Zone, which I'm in, and his time zone. So we're doing it on Sunday if you want to watch that live. So that's what's coming up on AV Week this week. State of Control, we just did a brand new DIY, Live, a ton of others. So go by the website, avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. This has been EdTech.